people are here. Okay,
Okay.
so my name's Philip Martin, and I'm the co-owner of Philip Martin Gallery here in Los Angeles with my partner Portia Hine. And I hope you've had a chance to meet Portia either at the gallery or at the fairs. I'm very, very excited to have an opportunity to talk with Tomory Dodge today about Sequencer, a show of amazing drawings, works on paper that are we're going to take a look at today, and maybe we'll get some preview of some Felix paintings coming up next week. So if you're in town, and if you have questions or anything, just send me an email. Let me know. Um, Tomory, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm okay. Well, I'm
Good.
super excited to talk about these works on paper. You want to get started? Maybe where do you want to start? Maybe you want to talk about how the project started because you just took
Sure.
off.
Yeah. It kind of just it kind of snowballed really quickly. And it really kind of it's funny. It basically started almost from just like some sketches I was making in studio, trying
Uh-huh.
to basically figure out like some kind of just formal structure for the paintings.
Uh-huh.
It's like working on all these paintings and just kind of trying to I guess the easiest way to say it is like I just, at this one point I, finished a show and I was trying to get started working again.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that, I figured, was just start painting, making these paintings. And I was, trying to just figure out like some kind of I don't know, some framework and formal framework for the paintings because I
Yeah.
would, I'd, put, colors down and paint over them and like this, forms would kind of start to emerge and I'd, just paint over those again and they'd evolve that way. But it just seemed like really kind of maybe haphazard or something. And so I was trying to figure out like some way to structure the paintings, and I just started to I like in the past I've kind of come up with these like really you think of them as like systems or as like formal systems to like generate a painting or something, and it's like just like a set of very simple rules. And then of course you make these rules and then I like to say I follow them but very badly you make the rules and you break them
Yeah.
constantly kind of thing. But in the sense of these drawings, I've started just like kind of dividing the paper in half, and kind of working off of that center line, kind of making forms off that center line, and then just responding to those on the other side, not necessarily trying to like reproduce them, but kind of use them as like something to um, I guess, work off of, and then kind of like you develop the drawing kind of out from that center line, following the that central form, but not very well again, and like
Yeah.
letting mistakes happen and just letting variations happen. And so they do have like this kind of, this kind of sense of radiating out from the center, a lot of them. Um, and just kind of started playing around with that and seeing what would happen. And I always thought of them as like a kind of step towards making the paintings. And the way the paintings have been developed lately, the past few years, I'd say, is like there's a lot of overpainting. That parts of that those previous marks, those underpainting kind of show through in areas. So I was like kind of trying to reproduce that in the drawings with like these kind of areas of these kind of marks that seem to kind of float over the top. Those are kind of meant to reference the areas in the paintings that kind of actually like come from underneath, but seem
Yeah.
to visually float on top. So there's like
Mhm.
this kind of interruption, this kind of um, I think of it as a way of like keeping the keeping like kind of like the idea, the concept in check in a way. Um, if that makes sense.
Well, tell us a little bit more about keeping the concept in check.
Oh, it's like that, it's like this um tendency, I think, for like ideas to kind of like hold prominence, maybe more than they should. I
Hmm.
like once you can kind of like explain like a concept in the work, it's like, oh, that becomes like what the work is all centered around and
Right.
becomes preeminent. And I definitely like to kind of like hold that in check, hold that up to question. So,
Is
you have like you present the concept, but then it's like, "Yeah, but then there's this other thing. So don't get carried away."
is part of that having an idea of what it's going to look like before you get started, and then having that actually start changing and embracing that? Is that part
Yeah,
of?
definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and that's something like that I've kind of wrestled with in the work generally for years. It's just like, this you get this idea of what you want to do, and then you start doing it, and it just like starts to go sideways. And it's like, you kind of you either embrace that or you kind of resist that. And I think
Right.
I tend to do both at different times. But it's not like it's not always like just like, happy accidents.
Yeah.
You know, um, it's yeah, it gets very frustrating sometimes. But it's like that's how the paintings get made.
Yeah.
It's yeah, you're going for a ride sometimes.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff in here. I mean, I like this idea that you're in a hall of mirrors between being the embracer and and the
Yeah.
resistor.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of ways we could talk metaphorically for how
Mhm.
that fits your practice. And of course, another thing too is, this point that we have an idea, and then as we start to explore it, one starts to see that that idea is maybe conditional.
Mhm.
And then, I think ultimately, at least as I see your work, you always seem to me like an artist. If you see a door to make the big discovery, you'll just blow up the whole thing to step through
Yeah.
that door.
Yeah.
So,
I think I tend to do that.
so, in an amazing way, which is really, yeah, is really risky. So it's kind of fun
Yeah.
hearing you in the process. Tell us about this piece and maybe some of the way these patterns are being developed in the background. I mean, one thing that's nice talking about drawings is to give people a sense of your studio. And I don't
Mhm.
know if this is true, but one thing I'm often drawn to is that you have three walls that it seems like you're looking at a lot, and then you have this couch area. And in the couch area, there often are drawing supplies and pieces of paper and
Uh-huh.
things floating
Yeah.
around. Is it, tell us about where you are maybe when you're making these
Well, when
works,
these,
or
I'm at kind of all the drawings were made at my live workspace just
right.
because my regular painting studio is like so dirty and like dusty. There's no piece of paper safe in there. Um, so these are made at my live workspace where, there's, I, also have paint but yeah, it's like they're made at my kitchen table.
Yeah. So what's that
Um,
like? I mean, do you sit
it's
down
great.
and yeah.
Yeah, I sit down and I like, try to clear off the table as best I can, and I'll make some drawings. And then when it's time to eat, I have to move all the drawings and go back and forth. Um, but yeah, it's been great working that way. I really like it.
Yeah. What
Um,
about color pencil as a medium? Is that a medium you've used a lot?
No,
Yeah.
no, I really just started using it, I'd say like, seriously in the past with these drawings.
Mm.
Like it was not like my first, idea of how to make it because like I said before, like these drawings started out almost just like sketches in like a sketchbook, really loose with just like a pen or
Hmm.
a pencil or something. And then I, thought like, oh, maybe try to maybe make them a little more developed. And so at one point I was using like think I did some early small versions with just like kind of pen and ink where they're just black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided, I should really try to make them larger and see what that would do. And my first thought was to use pastel to make them
Right.
just because there's like that similarity to painting. And they're always like the idea of making these drawings was always like I always saw them as kind of like a step towards paintings to making paintings. And so like I thought about using pastel to make them, and then for whatever reason, I was like in at the art supply store, like stocking up on pastels, and I was like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, I don't want to do. And I saw the colored pencils, I was like maybe that's the way to go. So I bought like a bunch of colored pencils and
Yeah.
started making these drawings. And I really like the I mean, it sounds funny, but it's like I like the work required
Yeah, sure.
with the colored pencil, like
Yeah.
the kind of this,
Yeah, you're
doing this
grounded
for
in
like,
that motion.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's something in that I think really contributes to the drawings in an
Yeah.
interesting way.
This is a drawing I really like called Electric Company, which we
Mm.
will have at Felix along with some of the paintings. And, of course, the center of this drawing, you see it, but then once you get into it, you see a lot of variation in the pattern on this particular one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, with this one I divided the piece of paper in half at
Hmm.
first, and then I divided the two sides in half and used those two kind of
Okay. Yeah.
that's where I started working off those lines. So you kind of you get like and when you kind of like, you work from so you're working from like, the those two lines out towards the sides and then out
Yeah.
towards the middle at the same time. So, you get like you get like all these problems, I guess you can think of it as happening like towards the middle, and so it gets kind of crazy
You
there.
mean
Um,
because we're like getting crushed as we're like coming
yeah.
together? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always funny. I don't know why it brought to mind, but somehow I often feel there's like a golden spike moment in a painting when you've got parts that you know are going to they're going to sync up
Yeah.
somehow,
Totally.
and you finally
Yeah.
like get to that spot, and you're like, okay, we now
Yeah.
have something there.
Yeah, I mean that happens a lot with well, since I've been kind of I mean, people talk about like, that I'm using pattern and a lot, and it's like I'm not using pattern. It's pattern like, but
Yeah,
it doesn't repeat. It's like
yeah,
it's always wonky. Even when I'm trying to like make something that's very
yeah,
pattern like, it just like it's not a pattern
yeah.
I think in the kind of like truest sense, but yeah, so it's like yeah, there's like when I was making these drawings, that kind of happens a lot where you get like these two different things kind of happening independently, and then they meet, and it's like you start to you have to kind of like resolve that some way, and that gets really interesting to me.
Well, let's go back to the pattern point and talk a little bit about that because in the
Yeah.
Instagram post that I did this morning, I actually changed the press release and used the word pattern where previously I had had the word composition because I was saying that the
Yeah.
works have their own generative logic.
Hmm.
So clarify for me like what a pattern
I
is
mean, to
as
me, the
opposed to.
pattern it just means like, something that repeats.
Mhm.
There's some like element of repetition in that, and like and I think these drawings maybe barely qualify in that
Well,
direction.
there's repetition in the action and in the
There's
line
repetition in the
itself and
action
that
for
kind of
sure.
thing. But
Yeah,
as you point
there's
out,
a repetition in the logic,
yeah.
but like yeah. Um,
But then all paintings are vessels, so all containers have
yeah,
rules of one kind or another. But as you
sure.
point out, they very quickly get violated,
Yeah.
tossed to the side, or not followed very, very well.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about space? Like, I guess, in a pace like this, like, do you see this as like a flatbed space or a deeper space?
Both. I mean, I
Hmm.
think they get very spatial for me,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the space unfolds in them,
Yeah.
as you look at them. Um, the um the like all the kind of those like little visual interruptions,
Yeah.
the kind of marks and stuff coming through. I mean, those are like the things I put down first in these
Yeah.
drawings, and just kind of like it to reference the paintings, whereas like that's kind of all the underpainting and whatnot.
Well, this almost has a
Coming
like a digital vibrational energy, through the mark, through the
Yeah, this one
marks.
does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this one
for sure.
really does. And what
Yeah.
about there's a painting you did called Lover that has a foreground with a background, and you've used some radiating things. What about
Hmm.
also how this might relate to the bottom, that band? When the studio I
Yeah.
had mentioned, you've kind of, I was thinking about Diebenkorn or other people. Like,
Hmm.
tell me about that. Is that formational band or how
Yeah,
they relate?
that formate, that band, then it happens, it's very present in the paintings, maybe even
Mm-hmm.
more so than these drawings, with the
Mm-hmm.
exception of this one. And in the paintings, like there, like I said, there's like all this underpainting. Like the
Yeah, yeah,
way
right. Of course. Yeah.
I've found to make paintings lately is
Right.
you make like, five or six paintings and then
Yeah.
you paint over all of them.
Yeah.
But what I've started doing is like leaving like a section at the bottom, and usually at the bottom, sometimes it's been at the top, but usually the
Yeah.
bottom, that's kind of like I leave that
Yeah.
uh, area and kind of treat that. And I won't paint over it, to the same degree, and I'll still maybe work it a little bit, but I'll work it differently than I do the
Yeah.
rest of the painting. So it's kind of like I don't know, maybe I'm trying to think of like you know, exactly where that comes from, and I do like this kind of weight at the bottom that kind
Yeah.
of, most works is like some kind of pedestal or something for the
Yeah.
painting in a way.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
mean,
Something that
it
grounds
also
it.
comes, you can see it as like referencing landscape too, of
Yeah.
course, because horizon line or
Well, there's
something.
also something like very proprioceptive about it in terms of like grounding you in the physicality of your body in a
Yeah.
space in front of it. I mean, often one thing that I've thought about, and we've talked about so many different things, but you do have one has the idea of the opticality of high modernism, and that's an amazing idea, and we've talked about that, and we're going to get to some paintings here in a little bit, but just the idea that the eye can be really disembodied from the body, if that's what it means when Greenberg's using it. And this has that feeling like your brain is like on fire visually. And
Mhm.
then when you
Yeah.
have something like one of those lines, it also reminds you, okay, actually my eyes exist in a body. I don't know. I don't know if you respond to any of that, but that's just something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think uh I it's definitely something I think about a lot, and like that kind of opticality, I think is something I've always been fascinated by in
Mm-hmm.
paintings. Um, yeah, just and I think that sense of like getting it's like I liken it to music a lot, where
Yeah.
how music can like certain tones, certain chords or something played in a certain way can like give you goosebumps, and have
Yeah.
like this physical reaction. And I think of like when you get like a kind of opticality, like I think about it as like optical reactivity,
Mm.
in the work, where you get like certain colors together, or certain patterns and things like that, that you get like that kind of physical reaction almost.
And of
Um,
course, you are a musician. You play drums.
mhm,
You use the modular synthesizer, and
mhm.
those are things we've talked about. I mean, we called the show Sequencer.
Yeah.
Um, this piece is called Sunday in the Park, and I also wonder if a lot of your titles might come from songs or things like that. What about
Sure,
some of your
yeah.
other
I mean,
titles?
I think of them that way a lot. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like it's yeah, like I'll use like song titles for paintings, or I'll try to title the paintings as if like, titling a piece of music or something like that. I
Hmm.
try to think of them that way often. Um,
What
yeah.
about color variants and kind of as we move through some of the last drawings, sort of working with this is called green resonance,
Mm.
and then here we are sort of negotiating it again.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. Color,
This has like a
I
waterfall feeling
I
to it.
know, yeah. I mean, I think of this one almost as like Um, you
Have you
know,
ever painted a waterfall? Because you painted lots of
have I
water.
painted a waterfall? That's a good question. I don't think I've actually painted a waterfall. I've painted lots of like reflections in water though,
Right.
and that's like some of these drawings, this one in particular, like I think definitely kind of that make me think of like that. There's
Yeah.
like one thing that this one especially makes me that I kind of just came to mind while I was working on this drawing in particular is that Egon Schiele
Hmm.
painting of like the boats and the reflection of the
Yeah.
boats in the water,
Yeah.
and it's like that just the way that like he painted those reflections that made me think of. I
I
was
think
thinking.
one of the first paintings of yours I spent a lot of time with would have been around 2003, and it was at a collector's house, and it was a water like a brook painting, like with stones and stuff in the water is what it felt like, and it had
Uh-huh.
this kind of stacked
Yeah.
reflectivity
Mm-hmm.
going down the painting
Yeah.
horizontally with this
It was
kind of
probably
angle to it.
it was probably like, garbage floating in like, pool of water or something. But that was like a big theme of mine back then. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yes. Same idea, same
Southern
thing.
California never disappoints.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, this is what I wondered about sound titles because this painting is called Abu Gil, and I was
Mhm.
there's a song thing. So yeah, I mean, in this it's interesting. We got just a few paintings that we will take a look at, and this will be at Felix. This painting Abu Gil. I think it's interesting because of course you also use scraping expressively as well as additive mark making to kind of create space. Do you want to talk a little bit what you've mentioned earlier about leaving things and kind of doing that sort of thing, or however you might respond?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's like I you think of it as like I think of it often as just like a filtering device,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like something I think about a lot in terms of the paintings is it's like you make this thing and then you can work on this painting and then like you can you know kind of apply some kind of filter over it
Mm-hmm.
or that changes evereverything all of a
Yeah.
sudden, and you
Well,
can think about that in terms of like sound a lot. Like that's how you work, a lot of like synthesized sound is made by filtering, these sound waves and you can radically change what you're hearing by
yeah.
filtering stuff. So it's like very transformative. And so I think of it that way, and just
Yeah.
like yeah,
I
and
love
but
the yellow drip in this one, and I love the play off the orange. A lot of your
yeah,
paintings too have these things where you might find a spot in it, like maybe you're going to start here, and then you're going to negotiate space off of that spot, and then you see something else. You're maybe taken to a new part of the picture, and then it's like it all flips as you negotiate through space that way. That's something
yeah,
that I always enjoy. Also, this what a lot of pieces that you've worked on recently have had kind of like heads, or there was a period a couple of years ago with a lot of flowers and a lot of
hmm
heads and a lot of almost things, and then those kind of became other shapes, almost like, I don't know, like playing cards, shamrocks, I don't know, all kinds of, and this has some interesting kind of residues here for me, and the feeling of a form, but also this feeling of space.
yeah, yeah. It's funny it's always a question of like, can you start working on these paintings and these forms start to emerge, and it's always a question of like, how far do you let them
Yeah,
go, or how, or how far do you follow them, and
yeah.
um, because I mean,
This is a beautiful painting, Tomory. I just
thank
love
you.
this painting. It's a gorgeous painting. It's really
It's
pretty.
like yeah, and it's like how far do you want something to go? Is because you can really like take these forums and develop them until they're
Right.
like very recognizable, undeniable, whatever,
Yeah.
give them a flower or a head or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Was there a
And
point in your practice when you used to say go for that, and then a
uh-huh,
point in your
yeah. And
practice where
then
you started to actually
but
say
then I kind of
okay?
liked, yeah, because like once you go for that, it's like, well, you get that and that's great. But for me it seemed I realized it's a lot more interesting when, um there's kind of like this question as to what the form actually is, you know.
Hmm.
It's
This no, go ahead. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
totally.
it's like, once it's undeniably identifiable as like a, insert noun here kind of thing. It like seems to like there's like this door that closes that I kind of like to keep open, I guess. You know,
That's got to be the next show title. Insert noun
insert
here.
noun here. That'd be good. Yeah.
Well, this is also fun because this is the here we have this kind of central form. Again, we have a pattern that we're interacting with, and it's thinking about the drawings and what their drawings are doing. This is a moment for the viewer to maybe think a little bit about that. And I've always this was a fun, this kind of neon in quotes relationship in some of these ones. This one's called Horseman.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean
And
that's
I
a
love the
this
residue
whole
back here. Like I love
hmm
that. That's a great. It's such a so spatially now. You're just like, where is that? It's
yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah. I mean it's like it's like these these um and without those like kind of points of light, that
Hmm.
background is really flat, and
Yeah.
put those points of light onto it, which is really funny because usually you put a pattern on something and it like flattens it out, but
Right.
with those little, like, think of it as like, I don't know what they're like. What are those? It's like light bright or something, and you know and but it's like that causes that black to just
Yeah.
fall back. That's really drop back,
Well, it has
and
this funny
really
like
deep.
flipping associative thing, as you say,
Yeah.
because you've used it as like a kind of neon. It could be like a writing. It's formed the
Hmm.
basis. We'll see some interesting things late in a little bit. We might run over if that's okay, just a little bit,
Sure. Yeah.
looking at some of these paintings coming up. You want to talk about some of these newer ones? These are all new paintings, but also the scraping is interesting because it made for like a hyper flat painting that felt
Hmm.
like it had this hyper flat shape aspect almost, but then
Yeah.
still had real pictorial depth. Do you respond to that at all? Or
Yeah. I mean, it's like
I mean, look at
it
this green heart, like yellow part going back, or it's just like,
yeah.
yeah, so good.
Yeah, it's like kind of a lot of the space just comes from like building up color,
Yeah,
and like putting like like just semi-transparent paint over semi-transparent paint, and you get that pentaminty thing going on, and
uh,
you get really interesting like kind of spatial things that start to happen that way, and
yeah,
like the form kind of like starts building itself sometimes,
yeah.
which is fun.
Well, this is an interesting one because when you talk about forms building itself, it has, it to me has a bodily kind of quality
Hmm.
to it. And but also like look at that wonderful like yellow. That's so good. It's really good. This is the part where I just say they're really good. I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah,
I'm allowed to
yeah,
be. I'm allowed to be moved. Um, and then I thought it would be fun also with the drawings to show your 2023 show,
yeah.
just the large scale approach to pattern that happened in this show, and so much. The spaces are just amazing in some of these paintings, and I just thought it would be fun to show people. And though we're gonna wrap up, if people have questions, they can put them in the chat, and I'll take a well if I can figure out how to use it. But did you want to talk about these paintings at all? Maybe in
Sure.
relation to the
Yeah. I
drawings,
mean,
like
this is
that's
like
appropriate.
really, yeah, this like, I mean, back to that idea of kind of like filtering things. I mean, this
Yeah,
show is really like all about that, and
yeah,
in a big way. Like, just making these paintings and then layering these and it's like that's idea of like taking the again like like you're talking about the golden spike kind of thing where like having two independent things like kind of head towards each other and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
what happens when they meet, and so it's like I was making these paintings and then layering these kind of these patterns over them. The pattern had like totally indifferent to the painting that was underneath in a lot of ways,
that's fascinating
in most
description.
ways. And so like
Hmm.
what happens then, and
Yeah,
how do they affect each other? And of course, being the person I am, like not really great at making painting patterns like freehand, which is what they all are. And so like the patterns get like there's so many mistakes in
yeah,
them. And I think the mistakes are like the best part, for me. Like,
yeah.
there's like the mistakes are just like I love when they,
Yeah.
it's like something off
Well,
with
it's interesting when you
patterns.
create
Yeah.
a structure, and it's interesting what you're
Hmm.
saying. You put the pattern on there and you use the word indifferent, which is really something
Yeah.
to have a generative term flowing in the practice that's indifferent. It's like you're playing chess with yourself. I don't quite know how to
Mhm.
describe what that
Yeah.
to have that to have some mechanism. It's reminding me of some of the like advanced kind of board games that my son will play, and we've played together, where often you'll have a what they call an automa, like if you've ever played like a scythe type game, and so there's a rules generating engine in the game that's playing with you, but it's doing its own thing simply
Hmm.
according to whatever the
Oh,
rule
interesting.
structure might be, which
Yeah.
made me think also in thinking about these works of yours, just about not to talk about AI or something, but just to talk about how we're in this world now where images are also very generated and driven according to mechanisms that we might not
Hmm.
instinctively understand, but we're
Sure.
perceiving. I don't know if any of that feels
Yeah, I mean, I
relevant
don't
in
know
terms.
about, yeah, I wouldn't talk about
You
it
can
so
just
much
flush
in,
that all down the toilet,
well,
but
no,
we'll see.
I think like, I think it's more like probably less AI, but maybe more just like the idea of algorithm,
Yeah. Well, I thought your word
probably
indifferent
relevant.
was
Yeah.
probably the best description as to what
Yeah,
you're
I
doing
think,
here.
that's, yeah. Yeah. I think indifferent,
Yeah. Well, is there anything that we haven't talked about or that you might want to talk about before we head out here? Anything we haven't covered?
I don't know. I think, there's like one thing that I just thought of that it might be interesting to mention is like I think and especially well with these for sure, but definitely with the drawings and the more recent paintings that are in the studio, not done yet, but
Yeah,
are
yeah. That people
coming
haven't
up
seen
soon.
yet. I mean, this is still
People
to
haven't
come,
seen
and we're
yet.
working on our next solo
Yeah.
show, so we'll figure that out.
Yeah. But I think I this talk about like like systems and patterns and I think it's important to talk about that stuff, but in the end I think I think of the drawings some more than others of being like really funny.
Yeah.
you know I mean I think they're like I think of them as like in terms of like kind of comedy
Hmm.
and tragedy too, of course, but I think of them in those terms in the end,
So
it's like
what does that mean? You mean what is that for you? Is that I mean, if it bends, it's funny. If it breaks, it's not funny. I mean, I think that's the Alan Alda
I
quote.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe something like that for
Mm,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. You
If it
know.
bends, it's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're like so I mean, they're like um it's like you take like the kind of like the gravity of like, Greenbergian modernism and like, do like a slapstick version of it or something.
Yeah.
Or it's like yeah, it's like that kind of the seriousness of it. You do like the comedy version, or like it's like the you kind of yeah, you treat it less seriously
Well, this
in
one's called
a
Hornet,
way.
which I think is,
Yeah.
when you talk about that, just really light, nice interaction. Well, on
Hmm.
that note, Tom, it's great talking to you. We had a really nice comment from someone who loves your flow and is totally inspired by your work and how you're able to keep things going and make them
Yeah.
interesting for both you and for us, the viewers. So, thanks so much, everybody, for
Yeah.
joining us.
Thank you.
The work. If you have any questions, just let me know. Send me an email, and of course, we'll see everyone next week at Felix. I hope if you're there, I hope everyone's doing well. Hope everybody's safe. Thank you so much for doing this with me, Tomory.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great.
Awesome.
All
Take
right.
care, everybody.